Are you using Dr. Google to diagnose your mental health? Well, then this is the video for you. Welcome back to the MindStrong Edge. Today's letter is actually one of many that we've had from men and also some women as well, asking the simple question about where they should seek mental health information from, because there is so much available. And it is just a state of confusion that a lot of people find themselves in, and quite often going down completely the wrong road. So the letter today, we've had, I would say, at least half a dozen that are very, very similar. But we've picked this one as a typical example of the sort of query that we're getting. And it reads, Dear MindStrong Edge, firstly, I want to thank you for creating a space where men like me can feel comfortable seeking help and understanding about mental health. Thank you so much for that. It's not easy to know where to turn, and your channel feels like a great starting point. Well, that in itself, I appreciate that feedback. But that in itself, I think, and you will appreciate the irony in where we're going on this, is that this is a YouTube channel. And whilst we do answer specific questions, it doesn't account for, or it's not a replacement for sitting down and actually being open and discussing and having that dialogue with someone who's a professional practitioner that knows where to take you and perhaps also knows where not to go as well. So yes, the internet is a great starting point. There's no question about that. There's a wealth of information available here on YouTube and other places as well. But I would caution you and say that consider it just a starting point. I find, and a lot of other people find, is that once you start looking for things on the internet, particularly YouTube as well, the algorithm, the thing that decides what to feed you next, will pick up on that. And if you're looking, say, for ADHD or autism or whatever, bipolar or narcissism or whatever you think might be applicable to you, next thing, you're just getting a tsunami of that stuff. And it can come from all quarters, and next thing, that's all you're getting, and you can go down this rabbit hole of misinformation. Now, I'm not saying that these channels, it is misinformation, but it may not be applicable to you. It can drag you to a place that may amplify or inaccurately amplify your self-diagnosis and take you to a place where is not appropriate for you. So I would caution you, and obviously there is some irony in me doing that right now, but I just wanted to address that first statement. You said your channel feels like a great starting point. Consider it a starting point. That's it. And then hopefully what we'll do here is we'll just answer some questions about where to go next. Okay, I've been doing some research and chatting with friends about personality disorders. And while I've learned a bit, I'm finding the information overwhelming and honestly a little confusing. Absolutely hear what you're saying there. It is very overwhelming and can be, well, you say a little confusing. I would say for a lot of people, it's a lot confusing. There seems to be so much out there about symptoms, causes, and treatments, but it's hard to figure out what applies to me or what steps I should take next. And this is the reason why we chose this particular letter, because a lot of people ask the same thing, but I think what you put here is really on point. I really quite like the fact that you've hit the nail on the head straight out of the gate. You continue, for example, I've noticed I can sometimes get really frustrated in relationships, like when things don't go the way I think they should. I'll shut down completely or even say something hurtful that I don't mean. It's like I get caught in a loop of reacting instead of reflecting. And it's straining the connections I have with the people I care about. I don't know if this is linked to a bigger issue, but it's something I'm worried about and want to address. Okay, so let's just step back for a moment. You've noticed some problems in your relationships, and you've done some research, and interesting that you say that you've been chatting about personality disorders. And from a clinical point of view, the word disorder should not be taken lightly. If we look at most personality disorders, there is a criteria against which It's essentially a checklist. And then once you've satisfied some or all of those criteria, we have then what we call like a differential checklist, because there are other disorders or other behaviors that are in the same ballpark. And we also need to assess those to make sure that, well, maybe it could be part of that. There's a lot of crossover between different personality behavioral types. And there's a lot of assessment that goes into it by a clinician if you get to that point. But the key here is that it's the word disorder. And you'll hear people throw around terms like, oh, it's my OCD, or, I'm NPD, narcissistic personality disorder, or something disorder, ADHD, attention deficit hyperactivity disorder. There's always this disorder at the end. And the disorder is a clinical term that what it boils down to, it says that this particular behavior is actually actively interfering with your life. It's actually putting up some sort of blockade, or it's stopping you in some way on a regular basis in a number of environments. And usually when we assess this sort of stuff, we look at where it's happening, because it could just be happening in one particular place, and it could be symptomatic of the environment or the person that you're seeing in that environment. It may not be an actual behavior that's inherent in you and exists across different environments. So I just really want to contextualize that, because it's really easy to go, I'm looking at all these disorders. The disorder really has to be something that is really coming up and blocking you from conducting yourself day to day in a way that you would hope to do. It's actually affecting relationships in a regular, persistent manner that is detrimental to your day to day. So always consider that when it comes to disorder. It's not the clinical definition, but I just wanted to put it in a context that you could understand. It pretty much means that. So anything that's got disorder on it, put it in that context. Now, you say here that you're getting frustrated in relationships, like when things don't go the way they should. Okay, well, you haven't said anything specific about where the relationships fall. It could be across the board, or it could be with a particular person. Again, this is what we try to do here on this channel, and it's why we call it the MindStrong Edge. It's about being stronger and smarter in the mind, and sitting back for a moment and just having a look, lifting the hood, if you like, of the car, and just first of all having a look without any sort of judgment or prior knowledge, and just having a look in that engine bay and looking for anything that's obvious for a start, and then having a hunt for something that may not be quite as obvious, but just taking our time, following the leads, following the hoses, whatever metaphor I like using that metaphor, but hopefully you understand what I mean is that we're not jumping in, and it can be very easy to do that when it comes to self-diagnosis. We see it all the time. We see people that come in for their first session and they've already decided that they're bipolar, for example, or they are this or that, or they've got some personality disorder because someone's labeled them as that. They've gone and looked at the symptoms and gone, oh yeah, that's me. You look at narcissism. We did a video on narcissism. We actually did a couple of videos on narcissism. And a lot of the symptoms of narcissism are things that everyone has every single day. It's the basic sort of self-preservation stuff that we work with every day. But it's when it becomes obstructive and when it is combined with other behaviors that we have a term for it, which is narcissism. But narcissistic behavior, if you just take one aspect of it, is not narcissism. It's just a behavior that we exhibit because we might be selfish, or we might have motives that cause us to be selfish, or we might have reasons that are quite legitimate for looking after ourselves first. And I don't see anything particularly wrong with that, and in and of itself. Anyhow, he goes on to say he's worried about what to address. What I'm hoping for is some guidance. How do I find reliable information that actually applies to me? That's a great question, that is. And when do you know it's time to stop trying to figure things out on your own and seek professional help? Any advice would mean a lot to me. Thanks again for everything you do. It's reassuring to know people out there who really care about men's mental health. We do care about men's mental health. sadly neglected. I was talking to a client just the other day about, why that is the case. And we really feel that, men in society are expected just to be strong, just to deal with what comes along. And when we can't deal with it, it's seen as a sign of a weakness and a loss of masculinity. And you kind of cast aside as if to say, well, we have this expectation of you to be strong, and you're not. So, your self-worth goes out the door. And I think this is one thing that stops people from seeking advice, is that just the mere thought of seeking advice feeds into that. It's like, I don't want to be seen to be weak. I don't want to be seen to be reaching out for help. Because, people are going to cast me aside and feel that I can't be relied upon to be a man and to protect and to do all those things that a man is just expected to do. Very difficult place to be, particularly when you need help, particularly as a man, as you're getting older. And of course it applies across the board, but we do see a lot of older men, 50s and above or mid 40s and above, that really struggle with this sense of purpose. So I get it. It is difficult to know when. So look, thank you for the letter. I've gone through this letter and also a few others and just prepared some responses to this. The first thing I would say to you is be discerning about where you are going for information. Going to the internet in the first instance and typing in, maybe something that someone's told you is interesting. And we see this quite a bit where a partner might say they've done the research on your behalf, without telling you, and they will confront you and say, I think you are this. And, that's causing you to just look at that. And there's every chance that you will look at that and you'll see aspects of yourself in it. Your attitude towards your line of inquiry will affect how you feel about that line of inquiry. Let's be open about that right now. If you've someone that's you trust tells you that you've got something and you go looking for it, you will unconsciously gravitate to the information that you relate to, and you can quite easily come away and go, oh yeah, it's me. That's absolutely me. I'm totally that, because you've seen all the things that that relates to you, and you've kind of ignored the things that haven't, and you've come out with the unscientific conclusion that this is you. So I would say to you that if someone says to you, you've got a personality disorder, or you've got a bipolar disorder, or you're schizophrenic, or whatever they decide to tell you, then you really need to understand where that comes from. That's their conclusion. It's not clinical. It's not a clinical assessment. So you need to treat that with a little bit of caution, and simply just go, oh, that's interesting. Why do you think that? And I would be inclined to jot down some notes, to be honest, and say, well, just hang on a minute. I'm just going to grab a pen and paper. I just want to understand, where you're coming from on that, why you think that is. So I've got something to go away with, rather than just taking the wrap up, which is the name of the personality disorder, and then going to the internet and going, is this me? Because it's not going to give you the answer that you require. When to seek help, I think, is a good question. There are a lot of different, disorders or behavioural problems that we see. Narcissism, antisocial. We see borderline personality disorders and all sorts of things. But the first thing is to assess whether it's an actual disorder or not, whether it's actually stopping you from doing things day to day, that and it's not just symptomatic of an environment and things like that. So this is the first thing: is this thing impairing your ability to function in various areas of your life? And it needs to be in various areas. So consider work, relationships, your personal well-being, just how you think when you're by yourself. Is it actually stopping you there? And be objective about it. Do you consider this to be a disorder? And this is a really important thing, that if you're going to then look for help, is to understand whether it's a disorder or whether it's just something that's might be related to your environment, or a particular person, or some other external influence, drugs and alcohol. It could be any of those things. But working out if we're actually dealing with a disorder. Are you, and for, like you mentioned, relationships. So, is there some difficulty maintaining stable and healthy relationships? Is this we've talked about this before, a cognitive distortion in you? Are you amplifying certain negatives and ignoring the positives? So, this is a question that your counselor or practitioner will ask you, and hopefully they will challenge you on this kind of thing. Is your feeling about the relationships? Because you could say like, oh, everybody, it's just everybody. And my first question will be, well, is it everybody? Let's have a look at the people in your life, and let's write them down, and let's look at each one and go, what's happening in this particular case. And we would probably discover that there are exceptions to this assertion that you have, that it's not actually everybody. And you can see that what we're doing here is we're just digging out some detail about this behavior that you feel you have, how it's affecting you before we jump to the diagnosis. Okay, it's very easy to do it the other way around and just tick the symptoms and go, oh, I'm that because someone said you were that. It's dangerous. Are these feelings or emotions that are getting in the way, are they intense or unstoppable? Is it something that you feel you have no control over? We have a test on our website, which you can find anywhere. This basically got a stress test. Your general practitioner or doctor will ask you the same things, like how often are you feeling under duress? Simple questions like, have you ever felt completely helpless, or like things are so piled up on top of you that you can't get past them? Simple questions like that, and we would probably do something like that, a dozen or so questions just to get an idea of how you're feeling physically as well. You have difficulty sleeping. Is this stopping you from sleeping? And if we're starting to get some yeses in those things and it's happening regularly, then we might start to consider this could be a disorder, right? It could actually be preventing you from living out your life in a healthy, stable manner. You've got frequent mood swings. Are you feeling empty? Are you feeling that you're carrying a lot of despair? Do you feel that things are just getting too much in your life? And then we need to understand, well, why is that? Is it coming from the same place? I'm hesitating here to use the word depression because some people use the word depressed inappropriately. And look, that's nothing disparaging against people that truly are depressed, but it's something that does need to be diagnosed correctly. So once again, it's another one of those things. You could say, I'm really suffering from depression. And, the first thing we would do is to ascertain whether you actually are clinically depressed or whether it's symptoms of something else. Are you engaging in any kind of what we would call impulsive or self-destructive behaviors, such as substance abuse? I mentioned drugs and alcohol before. Are you doing anything else that you would consider to be reckless in your life? Is this a symptom of the behavior? Like, is the behavior causing you to do this, or is it the other way around? Okay, so you can see here there's a whole raft of questions and considerations before we even get to a diagnosis. Are you struggling with things such as your sense of self, your identity? We've done quite a few videos now on this and where these feelings come from. Is it something that, as a man, you grow older, you identify more or less with your parental figures, your father, for example? As we get older, we start to, one day we wake up and we feel older, and we go, oh my God, I'm in the ballpark of my dad, because your dad was always an older figure. He was always older than you, but one day you wake up and you kind of feel like you're like him. You look in the mirror and you see something, and it can really change your view of yourself, and these things themselves can influence the kind of questions that you have about yourself. So there are a lot of things to unpack, And I would say that what you've done initially is you've opened the door to questioning. Okay, yeah, you've used the word personality disorders. And hopefully my response to that is giving you something to go on. Just stay away from the disorder for a moment, or stay away from the clinical term, and just start to look at basic behaviors and, have a look under the hood at what's going on and just try and identify some things. Pretend for a moment that you're not a mechanic and you're going to go and see the mechanic, but you just want to have a little bit of information. You can go, well, it's making this sound. When I get above 60, it seems to do this. And, give them some information they can work on. But if you find that you do suspect that this is impacting your day-to-day and in different environments, like it's in work and at home, or it's a mixture of different environments, and there's some consistency in what you're experiencing, you feel that you're lashing out more. Again, that can be a little bit subjective, of course. But if you feel that there is an increase, or you've had feedback that it might be the case from someone that you trust, then it's time to reach out. And what a counsellor or practitioner will do, you don't have to go and see a psychologist or a psychiatrist first up. You might be using a sledgehammer to crush a nut, but what you need is someone that's professionally trained to listen to you and to help you get some clarity around the problematic behaviour. A counsellor will assist in that type of thing. Now, we talked about this in a previous video about understanding the scope of your counsellor, and I think it's really prudent that one of the first things you do when you go and see someone, or you have that sort of chat prior to actually engaging the services, is to ask them what their modality is. We talked about this before. Their modality is the area of practice. What type of theory or therapy do they focus on? And understanding that is really important, because you can really go in and end up with zero result and feel like you kind of wasted your time. Why did I even bother doing this? If you're a guy and you really feel like you need to talk to a guy who understands, then seek out a male practitioner and have a chat to them and ask what they practice. Now, we practice cognitive behavioral therapy, we practice Gestalt therapy and a few others, narrative theory and therapy and a few other therapies that really work well with men. They don't work well with everybody, but they predominantly work quite well with men. And we have a lot of success for that. So I would suggest that you ask some basic questions about, what kind of therapy the practitioner focuses on. What is their modality? If you ask that question, they'll get that you're actually onto them. Not to say that this is a world of deception or charlatans or anything, but I think you need to find a match. When you go seeking help, don't just blindly go to anyone that you can get an appointment with in the next week. But this person is trained to collaborate with you, to really listen, to give you space, to give you a sense of agency and empowerment, so you feel that you actually have some control. I think that sometimes searching for things on the internet can be quite disempowering. It can take away the power from you. You're listening to someone like you are right now, but there's a lot of people that talk about therapies with a lot of authority, and it's very, very easy to just hand over your sense of empowerment to them and have them tell you what's wrong. We go so far in answering questions here, but you've got to have that face-to-face. You've got to sit down and you've got to actually have a chat, feel that you're in a safe space, and that you can articulate what it is you're going through and allow someone to challenge you on those points. Look, seeking help for what you might consider to be a personality disorder can be really transformative and can really allow you to reclaim back your life as you know it, to restore normality. And to be honest with you, every counsellor's job is ultimately to restore normality for their clients. This is what we want to do. But I would suggest to you that if someone says to you, you've got a personality disorder, and they name something, let's say bipolar, for example, you look up bipolar and you're immediately tunnel visioned. You're immediately your focus is quite narrow, and you look at some of the symptoms, or you listen to an article, you watch a YouTube channel, and you go, oh, okay, yeah, it sounds like me, you know. And then you go into it, and you pick up the phone, and you find a practitioner, and you immediately go in armed with, I think I'm bipolar. It's taken you so far away from where you need to be in having a discussion with that person. If they're really good, they'll bring you back on track. The first thing they're going to say is, I don't accept that, because firstly, you've self-diagnosed, you're not a clinician, and you've probably got some wrong information in there somewhere. And it's one of the first things that I would usually think is to go, okay, well, let's just leave that at the door, okay, and let's have a chat about let's lift the hood and let's actually have a look at what's going on. Let's have a look at some of those relationships, get some context around it. So to me, fair enough, we as guys like to think that we can fix things. And we like to think that we can fix ourselves when we might be broken, because it's a sign of strength, right? I'm going to fix me, and I'm not going to reach out to help. I'm not going to say that I don't know what's going on in my life. But to engage a professional and be open and go, you know what, I don't actually know. I have a funny feeling that this is happening, and allow them to guide you in a way that they have been trained professionally to do. And deliver information that's specific to you with no judgment and no agenda, which is unfortunately what you will get when you watch something that's been pre-canned on the internet to essentially tell you that you are this thing. It's bias, confirmation bias is the term. And it will lead you down that road to something that can be ultimately far more detrimental to your health than there would be the case if you just stepped back for a moment, left that diagnosis outside, and just looked internally. I get it. It's a guy thing, we go in and we say, I just need to fix this. I just need some answers on this. But a good clinician, practitioner will not allow you to progress down that road. So your question, sir, is, when do you seek help? And how do I go about finding reliable information that actually applies to me? You got to talk to somebody, okay? And you've got to talk to the right person. So to wrap this up, don't go seeking necessarily a psychologist or a psychiatrist first up, but don't go the other end as well. Don't go to someone that's just a life coach. Not that there's anything wrong with life coaches or anything in that realm, but look for someone that has sitting in the middle, someone that has suitably qualified as a counsellor, because the one thing you're after is you want to have a very open dialogue with someone that can actively listen to you, because that in and of itself is going to allow you to express yourself. And that may just be the thing you need, is to have that dialogue with someone that can listen, that has heard some of these things before and can challenge you on the points, and then start pointing you in the right direction. It's a really interesting question. As I say, we've had half a dozen or so of letters like this with people that are reacting to what they're being told, or the conversations they're having with friends. Actually, I think you say here that you've chatted with friends. You've done some research and chatted with friends about personality disorders. Interesting conversations to have, but avoid the temptation of painting yourself with that and then just going and filling in the blanks. If you start doing that, then I would say to you, that's the time. That's the time to reach out. Find someone suitable, ask what their modality or their therapy of choice is, make sure they're suitable, and sit down and be prepared to be open without that assumption of your so-called diagnosis. I know it's tempting to feel like, oh, I worked it out all by myself, you know. Now just tell me how to fix it. This stuff, it doesn't work that way. Okay, it doesn't work that way at all. Look, thanks for your letter and to the others that wrote in on the same subject. There's no detail in here. I'm not going to hold that against you. I think you've deliberately withheld all the necessary information. You're just looking for where to go next. And I really hope that you do that. Continue to talk to your friends, but just take it with a grain of salt before you get the opportunity to really have a chat with someone that's qualified to challenge you on some things and to really have a good look around that engine bay and just see what might be connected incorrectly in there before you diagnose yourself with a disorder. Okay, so I hope we've answered that question for you. If you'd like to write into us, you can. The email address is help@mindstrongedge.com. There's an email address in the description of this YouTube channel. We would love to hear from you, and if you thought this was useful, please hit the like button and subscribe as well. You'll get our videos when we get round to putting them out. Until next time, this has been the MindStrong Edge. Thanks.